Welcome, everyone, to Hit Your Numbers, the weekly podcast for sellers and sales leaders who are serious about hitting their targets. Whether you're an SDR booking meetings, an AE chasing the next big close, or a sales leader building high-performance teams, we're here to help you hit your targets, boost pipeline, and become a top-performing seller. I'm Matthew Terrell, CMO at the Revenue Enabler. And I'm here with James Bissell, the main man. He is SDR turned AE and twice VP of Sales and now founder of the Revenue Enabler. Each week, we are serving up practical strategies, real advice on how to hit your numbers. As this is our very first episode, we thought we'd do a quick introduction to the hosts. That is myself and James. And James, a question for you. Why are we here?
Look, I've wanted to do this podcast for a long time. Just never really had the capacity or really the expertise to do it. So, I'm glad we're finally doing it, and we've got some amazing ideas. We've already interviewed some fantastic guests, so looking forward to bringing those to everybody, and then also interviewing some amazing people as we go through. And we'll kind of get into a little bit later in this episode what to expect from our podcast. But I guess the reason that we're here in general, or the main reason that we exist as a business, is a couple of reasons. So the first comes back to this word that I think is used far too much, especially in like B2B technology, SaaS, VC-backed businesses, and the word is scale. So a lot of organizations or a lot of sales leaders will talk a lot about scale. Let's scale this, let's scale that. And if we actually think about the definition, we need to first have a repeatable way of like being able to do something, right? Most of the time I'm like, hey, I hear people say, hey, let's scale this. And I'm like, hey, can you show me evidence based on data that you actually got this working in the first place to warrant scale? So what's happened, I think, in the market, and sellers will recognize this and feel this as well, is we've over-indexed on like hiring. So we've hired loads of people. We've gone from 10 to 50 sellers. And then when the market and economy, we're hitting all these these challenges, we're now under the firing line, we're under pressure, we're making cuts, all of this kind of stuff. So the first is we've actually created this part of the challenge for ourselves where we've gone to scale when we've not actually been ready to scale. And I experienced this when I was in my first VP role. We tried to hire, a couple more salespeople when we weren't ready, and it hurt us a little bit, and I learned a lot from that. So there was that part. But the real reason why we exist, and I'll kind of get into how the Revenue Enabler came about with me quitting my job and things like that to start this business, but it's for two things, and they're both directly connected. So the way that the buyer goes about their business has not just changed, but it's always changing. So anyone that sees anything from like Gartner, Salesforce, whatever it is, something I saw like a good few months ago, which really resonated with me, is Gartner found that 60% of B2B buyers suffer with buyer's remorse. And when I read through it, I think it was like at least one purchase in the last 12 to 18 months they've regretted. So if you think about it, sales are now under immense pressure to sell more with less capacity or less resources. So we're trying to push products on more and more people. Buyers finally get budget created to approve it, and then they finally touch and like, wait a second, this isn't what it looked like or how it sounded before I bought it. And now they got finance knocking on their door 6-9 months later asking for an ROI and how much business impact is it having based on the justification statements that you made to us 6-9 months ago. So buyers are really nervous. They know that they're not going to get budget signed off as easily as they were able to 3-4 years ago. So they're not responding as much to outbound emails or cold calls, that kind of stuff, because the way that we're talking to the market hasn't changed. The other thing is, as you're going through a sales process, because there's all this risk, finance are already placing safe bets, money isn't being created, budget isn't being created for anything and everything. There's a bigger pool of people that we need to drive consensus around on, hey, this is the right thing to do. But again, because sellers haven't aligned, buyers are trying to do that on their own. They've never had to do it before. They have been as a long time ago. So they struggle to win people over or prioritize this against a competing initiative. So if we think about the problem that we're all facing in B2B sales, a big part of it is the ripple effect of the buyer has changed and they are continuously changing, and sales hasn't played catch up. And this stems back from the biggest problem that B2B sales teams have faced for a very long time. And I just don't see it changing unless the CRO is held accountable. Part of their compensation plan is upskilling and reskilling their teams. Okay. All you have to do is go to Google, G2 Crowd, any kind of B2B technology site where it reviews sales technology, and you will see that there are thousands of sales and marketing technology companies out there. When I do coaching session with sales reps, when I'm looking at their Chrome extensions and their sales tools, they have like 10, 15, 20 sales tools, more sales tools than I've had hot dinners. Right. But so we've got all of these sales tools, but we can't build pipeline and we can't convert opportunities into close won deals, right? And that's kind of where the problem starts. Is I'm in WhatsApp groups with go-to-market leaders, VPs of sales, CROs, and unfortunately, far too many of them are in there saying, hey, we're trying to refresh our technology stack, or we're focused on bringing in new technologies. But there's thousands of technologies out there for sales organizations. They're used by lots of different companies, but they still can't build pipeline and close deals. So that tells me, when we look at the data, that it's not actually the technology and the tools that the sales reps have access to. It has to be something else. So if we think about how we start our career and how we get into sales, none of us woke up or, went to school and said, hey, forget, geography. I want to be a B2B salesperson. That just doesn't happen. Most of us stumble into it. So the problem there is that nobody gets a degree in B2B sales. I do not have a degree, a certificate on my wall that says James Bissell passed the sales university, of building pipeline and managing pipeline and driving deals to the finish line. Okay, I've had to learn this the hard way through making a load of mistakes and figuring it out on the journey. So if we take for a second, there's all these sales technologies available, and we're still struggling, but nobody is really obsessing over closing seller skill gaps. For me, the real problem to solve in B2B sales today is what gaps do we have in our skills across our sales organization, from SDR, AEs, sales engineers, whatever it might be, and what programs and initiatives can we spin up to close those skill gaps and drive our business forward. So that's why the Revenue Enabler exists. Don't get me wrong, we have technology partners that we partner with so that when we're delivering programs to drive and close skill gaps, we can recommend technologies to help enable us to do that. But deep down, the number one problem we have to solve, and we have to solve it now, is the skill gaps in our sales organization, and finally start to bring our sales team up to the level that our buyers expect us to be at. So yeah, that's why we exist. The reason that this podcast exists is that we genuinely want to help. We're not getting paid for this. So we're spending 3 to 5 hours every single week, literally doing podcast after podcast after podcast. And then Matt is investing an incredible amount of time editing these for you so that they're easy for you to consume and digest, and they're highly tactical with actionable takeaways, because we genuinely think that this is the biggest problem to solve. And if we can help you get 1 or 2% better every day, then that for me is a massive win. So that's, why we're here and why we exist as an organization.
I completely agree. And I think it's important to just reiterate that there's two things here. It's one, the Revenue Enabler exists to support skill gaps. And that's because you've been there, you've seen it, and I know you're going to get onto that in a second. But also, it's because we actually care. We've both been in industries, in companies where we see salespeople fall all the time, and not for a lack of trying, not for a lack of enthusiasm, not for a lack of wanting the commission, because they're just not set up to succeed. And this podcast is just another element of what the Revenue Enabler does, which is just to help salespeople succeed, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I don't want to be plugging the Revenue Enabler or the Sales University too much, but really it's all about just offering free content, free advice, free sales tactics tips, anything to help you get you through your week and hit your numbers. So James, tell us a little bit more about your background. Like, how did you get to found the Revenue Enabler, and what's your experience in sales? Like, why should another salesperson or a sales leader trust your advice?
I guess from a high level view, and I won't give you my life story because we'll be here forever, but I try to post on LinkedIn as many receipts as I can, like all of them receipts, like evidence and proof points. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn that talk a really good game and they have no evidence that they've done any of it. And unfortunately, I hear horror stories of people have invested SDRs hundreds of pounds or sales leaders tens of thousands of pounds, only to find out that when they bought it, there was nothing really behind it. So I think be very careful who you follow on LinkedIn because it's very easy for people to talk a really good game. Ask them for evidence. I'm happy to share loads of proof points and screenshots of HubSpot dashboards, Salesforce dashboards of high performance as a rep or as a sales leader. Because if I'm going to go and ask you to invest money, I need to hopefully demonstrate to you that I'm the right place or we're the right place to invest it. So just be, I guess that's my kind of bit of advice from LinkedIn's perspective. But how we've got to here this day, didn't do very well at school, had a pretty tough ride as a kid, and left school with pretty much no qualifications, didn't go to college or university as a result, and did some kind of like building work stuff like that, which was great in the summer, terrible in the winter, and then stumbled into my first sales job. It was one of those classic pyramid schemes. We've all seen them, we've all heard of them. You get no basic salary, like God, sounds like a great deal. You get paid commission only, and you have to knock on people's front doors and try and sign people up to Battersea Dogs and Cats Home and British Red Cross. To a complete stranger, give me your credit card details while I'm stood on your doorstep, or even better, let me into your house and give me a cup of tea while I sign you up. And built really thick skin doing that. I remember knocking on the very first door was a bit strange, and then made my way into inside sales. And we call it SDR now, but it was more like telemarketing then, making hundreds of cold calls, earning your seat, earning a headset, earning a monitor, that kind of stuff. And over the years, I did really well as an account executive, selling to mid-market enterprise companies, mainly in startups. And then when the pandemic hit, one of the companies I worked at, we were selling data from vehicles and nobody was allowed to drive. So we had no data to sell. So a very big part of the sales organization were furloughed, and I was one of the more expensive reps, I guess, on the team. So I was probably fairly high up there in terms of cost that they wanted to recover. So I spent 3 months gardening, which was lovely. And then one of my customers just sold his business that I'd sold to in the past, and he'd become an NED on one of the big VC firms in the UK. And they just invested in this HR tech company called Staff Circle. And he put me forward for a sales leadership role there. There was about 7 people in the business, and I don't know, maybe 12, 15 customers at the time. It was very early stage. The CEO had done a fantastic job building a product and winning some early customers, and now needed to bring in, I guess, some more horsepower to take it to the next level. I got put forward. Terrifying first 3 months. The economy's down the pan, like nobody's buying anything. Big companies are going out of business or letting people go. And I felt the pressure at a whole new level. I'd gone my whole career with pretty much little to no training and coaching. And now I'm doing this stuff with my playbook, with my reps, and we're getting explosive growth. We added 175 customers in those 2 years. We grew the annual recurring revenue by 1,000%. We had really, really good coverage across our customer base with all of the different products that we could sell them. Like we had a really good thing going. So when I left that business and went to the next one, which was an enterprise sales organization selling to the Amazons of this world, and we started to turn that team around, we reduced time to close by 64%. One of the reps went from 11 to 57% win rate, which is just bonkers. All came back to is identifying rep skill gaps and then working on a program to close them at a rep level, and great things happened. We had like the best technology available. They had that technology before I joined, right? So it's clear that that wasn't the driver. Don't get me wrong, as they got better at selling, those tools became more valuable to them because they like kind of weaponized them, right? But at that point, there were so many gaps, you just couldn't drive the outcomes we needed to. So 3 months before our baby was due, our first baby, I was walking down the beach with my partner like we did most mornings, having a coffee, having a chat. I was talking with her and she was like, "Hey, do you genuinely enjoy what you're doing?" And I was like, "I love the coaching part. I love the training part. I'm not a big fan of the pointless executive meetings where everyone's pulling in a different direction or there's not alignment and things like that. I wouldn't miss that stuff. And that's when I made the decision to go into the office and quit my job. A lot of people said I was crazy because the baby was 3 months around the corner. But I thought if I don't do it now, I might never do it. So didn't look back. And fast forward 18 months, we've now worked with hundreds of individual contributors, SDRs and AEs that self-fund working with us because they're tired of their company not investing in them, but they want to go places. And now working with startup VPs of sales and CROs to working with some really, really large, well-known brands and helping their organization improve sales performance through skill gaps and upskilling and reskilling. So that's kind of fast forward where we are today. We have two business models. We have a B2C model, which works with the individual contributor. We call it the Sales University. It's a training platform with 400 lessons covering the entire sales process. And then we blend that with one-to-one coaching to actually help you apply the training and reinforce it. And then we come into sales organizations and we look at your data. We tell you where the problem is based on your data. And then we run very targeted outcome focused sales training programs to close those gaps and send you off in the right direction. So we did a really good job. We got to a point where I was becoming very busy and wanted to grow this business. So that's when I put a job advert up and Matt applied for it and stood out night and day through the whole kind of process.
I mean, what is marketing if not selling? I want to mention this for the listeners because we've spoken about it a couple of times. And I just want to make it clear that you going through that process and being an AE, SDR, VP of sales, there was always that current theme that you're not getting the training. That's what we hear our customers say today. It's like, I'm a sales rep and I'm not trained. You're just thrown into the lion's den and it's like, right, get on with it. And then when you don't succeed, this companies have a culture of they hire, people miss their quota and then they fire and then they rehire. We know sales is a sort of high churn industry, but it doesn't have to be, right? And that's what I understand from you is where you wanted to come in and you're solving someone's problem and you're solving not just their problem, you're solving a huge problem when it comes to companies and organizations and sales leaders. It's about making everyone's lives easier, right? If you can help a salesperson fill those skill gaps, they can be more productive. They can make more calls. They can book more meetings. They can close deals. And that's going to in turn help the sales leaders. It's going to generate more revenue. And the cycle just improves one step at a time all the way through. And I think that's what you've done is proven that. But you've also been in the shoes of various different people in the sales industry. So you understand what it takes for an SDR, you understand what it takes for an AE and a sales leader and now a founder as well. You've talked about hiring people. So you might then be leading another sales team, whether that's what you've intended to or not.
Who knows, right? And that's the beauty. And I think this will probably be the reason why this business does succeed and doesn't end up going pop is because I believe deep down that the problem to solve is skill gaps. I believe it so much that I quit my very high paid VP job and went back down to zero income to build it to where it is today because I believe deep down, and I've seen personally firsthand, when you close those skill gaps and then you build a great culture, people want to stick around because you're investing in them and they go and do crazy numbers. I think we just need to bring all of the pieces together now and bring it together. But I do think there's such a powerful thing there. And again, before we jump into a bit of your background, just so that everyone can get to know you, one of the things I will say, you said something really interesting a minute ago around, that whole training piece. In both of my VP roles, I brought in third parties to help. I think sometimes a lot of sales leaders are a little bit nervous to bring in third parties like the revenue enabler because they're worried that the board are going to say, well, isn't that your job? But I was a very, very busy VP of sales. If we think about most of our customers, they are very fast growing businesses and the sales organization is usually growing very quickly. And like at one of my roles where I was leading 8-10 people, I was still doing demos. Not as many as they were as I used to, but I was still doing some demos. I was jumping on reps calls. I was coaching. I was looking at strategy, building strategy, implementing strategy, doing my executive stuff, doing the forecast, onboarding, recruiting. Like there would be certain times as we were going through that journey where I just didn't have the capacity, the bandwidth to help So I would spend 10, 15, 20 grand to bring in experts to help me so that we continuously moved in the right direction. I think sometimes, I don't know if it's an ego thing or it's like a nervousness of what people are going to think, but it's absolutely okay to ask for help if you're really serious about explosive growth.
Absolutely. And we just spoke about this on another podcast we recorded. So for the listener, we did a few recordings in reverse. So there is a podcast that's going to be coming out that talks about a little bit about culture and sales culture and fostering a culture of learning and acceptance and feedback and allowing salespeople to make mistakes and allowing them to grow, which we don't often see. And that's kind of part of filling the skill gaps as well. You want to enable people to feel like they can do that. And similarly, if you're a busy sales leader, it's okay to bring someone in to help fill those gaps as well. Technology is no different, right? You bring in a new fancy sales tool because you want to do things quicker and faster, and you don't have the time to do it now. So the tool helps you, right? It's no different in that sense.
So, Matt, why don't you tell the listeners a bit about your background, because you really kind of stood out like a sore thumb in the interview process because you resonated with the problem. Give the listeners a bit about your background and kind of how you've seen, even from a marketing perspective, this sales challenge in sales organizations and the impact it's had on them.
Oh, 100%. When I saw what you do, I was like, yeah, I can get on board with this because I've been in so many scenarios where I've watched the sales team, and marketing are quite privileged from the fact that they sort of sit on the sidelines of the sales team quite often in a lot of organizations. They provide supporting material, they provide frameworks for bringing in leads, setting up events so salespeople can go and generate more leads and speak to prospects and accounts. But really, you're sat on the sidelines watching this. And when I realized the power of actually just having people come in and train the salespeople in the specific way that I know James delivers his training, it just something inside me just lit up. I was so excited to know that there was someone or an organization out there that can help the people that are already in those jobs. So previous to being the CMO here, I've been the head of marketing, I've been a global director of communications and branding. I've had two of my own companies. I've worked freelance with various different companies of all shapes and sizes. I've coached and mentored startups, again, all shapes and sizes, from initial ideation concept through to MVP to pitching for funding, all sorts. I've also worked on the shop floor at various companies. I sold furniture, I sold jewelry, I stacked shelves at a supermarket. I've got a lot of different perspectives on selling and what makes a good salesperson. And, James, I don't know if we've ever talked about this, but I also went for an interview for one of those jobs, which was like a pyramid scheme.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
yeah, I must have been about 18, and I got brought into a room. He was talking about how he bought an Aston Martin after like 12 months and he'd spent hours like really, really selling this lifestyle. And then when you got down to it, it was like, right, pair up, go and knock on people's doors, and you get £5 for everyone who signs up. And then when you've got enough
Yeah.
sign ups, you can lead a team and then you get commission from their sign ups. And I was just like, okay, so we went and knocked on a few people's doors. I soon was like, yeah, this is definitely not for me. I think I ended up leaving like halfway through the day. But yeah, we've all been there. And when I say I've had a couple of my own companies, I used to run a company when I was quite young. I'm not going to say it was that successful. It wasn't. It was a huge learning curve, but you do everything, right? You do the sales, you do the marketing, you do the admin, you do the accounts, you do all sorts of stuff. And then when I was involved in the second business that I set up with a couple of colleagues, it was my job to pick up the phone. So sometimes I'd be sat at home ringing like 100 different people every day, trying to get through to, we were selling to universities and research institutions. So you'd be ringing them and not getting through. I had a spout as a researcher for a recruitment company. So the job title was not aligned with what I was actually doing. But I'd be on the phone ringing 100 people a day, trying to get through to CEOs of energy companies and trying to offer them a new job. And I tell you what, that was so challenging. And I got zero training. I got given a list of companies and a list of job titles, and I had to go and find people for these positions, and I got paid peanuts. But more importantly, I'm really passionate about helping salespeople get to where they need to be, because it helps everything in an organization run so much smoother. When you've got a good sales team who can sell efficiently, they're productive, it helps everything move. And
Yeah.
more importantly, from my side anyway, I'm hoping to add a little bit of a marketing spin on this. And I've done it in a couple of newsletters. If you don't subscribe to the Hit Your Numbers newsletter, do so. You can find the link on the website. I often put in there some advice from the marketing perspective about working with the sales team and sales working with marketing, because it's unbelievably important. And I've been in too many organizations and scenarios where they're very disconnected, and that doesn't bode well for the organization at all. And at the end of the day, we're all working to the same objective. We all want to make money, we all want to close sales, we all want to get new customer logos, but you've got to work with those different teams. And again, this is coming up in another podcast. I mentioned this, working with sales enablement and marketing when producing pitch decks and sales resources. You guys need to work together. It's so important. So I'm bringing that perspective. I'm bringing the marketing perspective. I'm bringing a dash of sales perspective. But more importantly, I'm here to help amplify what James is doing, but really just the most important thing about this podcast, the newsletter, the content, all the free resources you can find online, is it's there to help you. That's really it. That content is produced to help you. It's not to sell to you. It's free, right? This podcast is free. This video on YouTube is free. You pay for the internet. That's enough.
Yeah.
So,
Unless you go somewhere to like the library and you can probably access it for free. But yeah, everywhere else it's paid for.
if you're using pay per minute internet at your library, good for you. Support
Yes,
local businesses. But
100%. There we go, doing our part.
yeah, but really that's it. So this podcast is another piece in the puzzle for providing free content to sellers and sales leaders and founders and revenue officers and everyone who wants their teams and their companies to succeed when it comes to sales. So what can you expect in this podcast? We have a long list of guests lined up, from Richard Washington, who's a recruitment expert, to we have someone from Zoom. We're going to have people from all the companies that We're going to be talking all things sales. We're talking prospecting, demoing, cold calling, negotiation, closing, you name it. We're also talking AI tools. Everyone's using ChatGPT these days, but how are you using it? Are you using it the right way? If you're going to jump on ChatGPT and ask for a cold call script, we have some advice for you on how to do that. And that is just not coming from anywhere. It's because James has built some extremely complicated and complex custom GPTs and custom AI solutions which feed in specific data. So we're bringing real life experience. Use it, help yourself become a better seller. There's going to be a few mini episodes in there as well. So when you're scrolling the podcast listening list, you're going to see 5-10 minute episodes. These are going to be like sales university shorts. They're going to be like punchy, quick advice, tactical information. They're going to be answering the most important questions in sales today. Like, how can you become a better seller? How do you get people to stop ghosting you? How do you write an email that actually people open? What's the best discovery tactics? These are all things that we're going to be covering in this podcast. So there's going to be a long list of things for you to listen to, and to accompany the podcast there's going to be a video, which if you're watching this now, hi. If you are listening at home, you can go to the YouTube account, the Revenue Enabler, or you can go to the website and see the videos. And that's also where you're going to be able to access the free content. So James's LinkedIn is the best place to go for free content. He's going to be posting every day. He's been posting every day for 150 years since LinkedIn was invented.
Yeah, feels like that.
And you can sign up and get yourself a free account. Again, this is all free. So it's the Sales University Starter Plan. We're going to be adding all of our free content in there. And some of that free content includes cold call scoring sheets, if I believe, James, correct me if I'm wrong. There's various PDFs, spreadsheets, Google Docs,
cheat sheets, checklists, stuff to basically, and actually as well, guys, like it's a lot of stuff that people don't talk about. So everyone's talking about permission-based opens and things like that, but I actually want to bring you the things that are going to help you, like little calculators, like how many calls do you actually need to make to book a meeting based on calls made, connect rate, numbers of pitches, objections, and then show rates and things like that. So you can actually reverse engineer your numbers. So we're going to give you like lots of like guides and calculators and frameworks, not just the same stuff that everyone's talking about on LinkedIn. We also want to start interviewing your prospects to help you understand the most effective way to differentiate, stand out, cut through the noise, and add value and win more customers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think speaking to the people that you're trying to sell to is unbelievably valuable. We want to let you hear from them. What do they care about? What's the best way to contact them? What do they hate hearing? What do they love hearing? What's the worst experience they've had with a salesperson?
I think that's spot on. I think, I think from an actions perspective, guys, we're going to be pushing out a lot of content, so we don't want you to miss anything. So make sure that you hit the subscribe, turn on the notifications on the podcast, on YouTube, on LinkedIn. Go hit our newsletter, and there could just be that one piece of content that you really need, and if you miss it, it could make the difference between you getting promoted, earning more money, or just generally having a better ride in sales. So turn on all the subscriptions and notifications, go grab a free account, go follow us both on LinkedIn, go follow the company page. We'll put a load of those helpful links in the description here just so that you can go and check those out. But yeah, I'm really fired up, Matt. Like I said at the beginning, super excited to be doing this. Something I wanted to do 18 months ago, just didn't have the capacity or the expertise. So I'm excited. And if you're listening to this and you've got a topic in mind that you'd love us to talk about, Matt, there's no better people than the listeners, right? So, send us a message and say, hey, can we get a session on this? Can you talk about that? Have you got any resources to help with this? Let us know. We want this to be for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, we are going to be launching a live stream soon within the learning platform. So every month we're going to be taking your questions. So when you sign up for a free account, you get to tell us why you're signing up and what you want to achieve with it. And we're going to be going through all of those live. But thank you for listening to the first episode of Hit Your Numbers. We hope you enjoy the podcast. There's going to be loads of content coming. Best thing to do is sign up for the newsletter. Just make sure it's in your inbox every Monday morning as a reminder what to listen to, what to read, what to watch. And it comes with your weekly sales advice as well. But until next time, thank you very much.